My name is Dr. Kenneth Christie. I'm the program head and a professor in the Human Security and Peacebuilding graduate program at Royal Roads University, and I'm the president of the Confederation of University Faculty Associations of British Columbia, or CUFA BC. CUFA BC is the provincial voice for more than 5,500 university professors, instructors, lecturers and academic librarians at 5 research universities across the province. We work with the faculty associations at Royal Roads University, Simon Fraser University, the University of British Columbia, the University of Northern British Columbia, and the University of Victoria. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which CUFA BC's office resides is on the traditional, ancestral and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. We acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, the Musqueam and the Stoyo nations. We are here today to present the winners of the 2024 CUFA BC Distinguished Academic Awards. These awards honour the outstanding scholarship and public policy contributions of distinguished academics in British Columbia, academics whose scholarly activity have made significant contributions to the community beyond the academy. We believe that the ideas that flow from universities contribute in significant ways to the public good, to our citizenry and to our democratic landscape, our intellectual life and our economy. The awards demonstrate the necessity and vitality of public universities, especially the value of research. I'm pleased to present the winner of the 2024 CUFA BC Early in Career Award to Dr. Sean Irwin. This award recognises significant contributions to the broader community made by faculty members who are at an early point in their careers. Receiving this award represents the admiration of colleagues from across institutions, disciplines, geographic borders and beyond. Dr. Irwin joins us to talk about his research.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Please tell me about your research interest, Sean.
Broadly speaking, I have a particular interest in social and economic international development, with a particular focus currently in Latin America and Africa, and a particular more niche focus on food systems and global health.
You're recognized for your work in developing the aquaculture industry in Bolivia. Tell me about your work with the Fish for Life project.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The very first thing that I would say about that project is that those types of projects are a collaborative effort, and the momentum for those started before I was there. This is actually the 3rd project in a row on the topic. I was involved in the 2nd, but it started even before I entered my PhD. So that's been an ongoing effort by an excellent group of folks, both in Canada and in Bolivia. So it's really important to sort of highlight that that type of work is really accomplished, and all the success we've had is accomplished by people that are just dedicated to, really making a positive difference in people's lives. So the latest project, as I mentioned, is the 3rd in a series. It's funded by Global Affairs Canada. The first project we had years ago was essentially a proof of concept project. The second one, which I was involved with, was a scale-up project for food security. And then this 3rd one is particularly focused on continuing to develop the aquaculture sector in Bolivia, but with a focus on women's empowerment in particular. And it's quite an interesting project, a very holistic project, takes into account the whole value chain of aquaculture in the country. It does a really good job of trying to identify barriers to access for women, but also means to empower them, help them into leadership positions. And that to achieve that requires a systems approach. And so we work anywhere from the local producer all the way up to the national government even. And we've been, because of our ongoing work there, we've been highly successful. So it's quite an interesting project in a number of ways. One of the things that's worth talking about briefly is that aquaculture, maybe in BC here, sometimes is a bit of a dirty word, and indeed, in some cases, earned. But aquaculture is kind of like farming in the sense that it really depends on what you're talking about with respect to its environmental impact, its social impact, economic impact. So, for example, in farming, there's a big difference between chicken farming, growing pineapples, growing rice, and so on. And aquaculture is quite similar to that in the sense that, salmon aquaculture in one region is very different than the aquaculture that's going on in Bolivia. And what's quite interesting down there is that the aquaculture that's happening is, the production system is very environmentally benign. So aquaculture, or the fish, for example, are grown in earthen ponds that are lined with clay. Water is acquired through they're rain-fed ponds. They're filled with rain. So it doesn't put any pressure on natural water sources. Very little use, or really no use, of chemicals or antibiotics or anything like that. A very sort of low input production system. And the other thing too is that it uses a species of fish that is indigenous to the area. So what that means is that one of the big concerns, and this is a common concern up here, is when you have an introduced species escaping into the wild and having biological contamination like that. In this case, it's less of an issue because these fish are actually natural to the region. Right. And not only that, but one of the criticisms of aquaculture in general over time is that despite, some perceived promises of aquaculture globally as a mechanism to relieve pressure on the oceans, which is very much needed. Our oceans are very much under pressure. Aquaculture is supposed to be the response to that, but the problem often is that a lot of aquaculture is the growing of carnivorous fish, and so it requires what they call fishing down the trophic levels. And what that means is that instead of fishing for the fish that we're going to eat, we've increasingly started to fish for the bait fish, and then we grind that up, make fish meal, and then feed it to the fish. So in a sense, we're fishing to feed fish, and that's a real problem in those kinds of systems. The fish in Bolivia, which is called a pacu or a tambaqui, is actually omnivorous and primarily herbivorous. And so what that means is that you can feed the little bit of protein that it does need in its diet can come from soy or the byproduct of animal processing. So in that case, it also has some very attractive environmental characteristics. And then socially, one of the really interesting things is that it's become a real sort of potential livelihood for women in particular. It's fairly low labor requirements. It's basically, once you put the fish in the little fingerlings in the pond, you grow them out over about 8 months, and all that's really required is to go out and feed them every once in a while. And that's very sort of conducive to women's pre-existing cultural norms with respect to child caring and house and caring for the house and so on. They can go out, they can feed the fish, they can have ownership over that particular livelihood amongst a diversified portfolio of livelihoods that many of these rural farmers have. And or the children can help out as well. In Bolivia, there's a bit of a custom of women contributing to food production in proximity to the house. So it's really sort of conducive to their participation, to their ownership over that. Mm-hmm. And so that's been very, very successful in that regard, and it's led to a bit of a snowball effect. So what has happened over time now is that women are starting to get more and more ambitious about it. The fish is actually fairly is fairly profitable relative to other livelihood opportunities. And this is leading some women to create organizations, to start other businesses, restaurants and markets and so on. And there's a real sort of snowball effect of economic growth. So today in central Bolivia, where we work, where fish was very, very limited, most of the fish that anybody ever ate maybe just came from the rivers. Bolivia historically has had one of the lowest rates of fish consumption in the world. That fish consumption over the last 10 years or so has about tripled on a per capita basis, and particularly in that region, because a lot of those people will eat the fish from their ponds, but mostly it goes to market. It's a market-based system, and it's really been successful in the sense of not just the farmers benefiting, but all these businesses that have emerged. We've got all sorts of restaurants and fairly high quality, very fine, nice restaurants that are somewhat of a destination. And in fact, the core heart, the heartland, the town that this operation is around, has become a bit of a culinary destination. Actually, people will drive from the big cities to go, on an anniversary or on a birthday or something like that. And so it's really been successful. It's gotten the attention of the government. The government has made tens of millions of dollars of investment into the system. One of the people that we've worked with from the very beginning, she has a gigantic restaurant, and I don't mean to make assumptions about how much money you might make, Ken, but I bet you she makes more money than both of us, maybe even together. But she started off, showing up to training sessions and so on with her, firstborn little girl on her back and, old sandals and stuff. And now she's quite successful. And it's certainly a bit of a singular story, anecdotal story, but there's a number of other people that have had a lot of success in that area. So the current project is really focused on amplifying that women's leadership, that women's development, and that really includes actually talking with men as well. And that's really the key thing. I have a close colleague and friend who teaches in the gender department at the University of Victoria, and she always says, women's empowerment's not a women's issue, it's a men's issue, right? Because it tends to be men that get in the way of their empowerment. So, we're really proud of that work. It's always a bit of an uphill climb, but we got a great team that's been working really hard on that, and we're really investigating some interesting elements there to make it as effective as possible.
You also work with Malawi and communities to develop water, sanitation and hygiene and healthcare facilities in low and middle income countries. Can you tell us about your innovative project, Streams?
Sure. So first off, again, it's just a collaborative effort. The idea behind addressing wash and healthcare facilities came from a close colleague of mine initially, and we ended up partnering up to really develop this innovation, Streams. And then we were successful in applying for a grant from the Fund for Innovation and Transformation, which is run by the Manitoba Council for International Cooperation and, of course, Global Affairs Canada. And they allowed us to test this innovation in Malawi. And so what Streams is basically a response to the really, really awful, problematic situation of poor wash, so water, sanitation, hygiene in healthcare facilities. So this is a topic that when I first got into discussions about, I was quite surprised really to find that it didn't actually receive a lot of research attention. And it seemed like a no-brainer to me. It's very rare, I find, where you can find such a obviously important topic, but have very little generally focused on it. There's an extensive amount of work on wash in communities as far as provisioning of water, a lot of work on wash in education systems, for example, in the Global South. But this healthcare facility piece has generally been lacking. However, in around 2019, the WHO and UNICEF partnered up to start to produce the first report on the state of WASH in healthcare facilities around the world. And those very macro analysis turned out to reveal some pretty startling statistics. Large percentages of clinics and hospitals don't even have running water, don't have proper hand washing facilities, waste separation facilities, and so on and so forth. And so my partner, she ended up getting very involved in this because has a history of working in international development, particularly with a focus on WASH. And in 2019 did a bit of an assessment in northern Malawi about their conditions at 18 healthcare facilities there. And her findings were very consistent, if not worse, than the findings of UNICEF and the WHO. So what she sought to do was start to try to develop a solution to this problem, because that's the real core thing, is we have a pretty good understanding of the problems, but how do you fix that? How do you make some positive change towards improving these things? And so they started to develop streams, and what STREAM stands for is systems, training, empowerment, and monitoring support. It's a little bit of a mouthful, so we decided streams would be more appropriate. And then we partnered up to apply for this grant to really test it. And in the process, really refined the program, started to figure out how it was going to be implemented, and then started to look at exactly how it was affecting both patients and staff. And another core focus of that particular project is, again, women's health. So women tend to use healthcare facilities in Malawi and most other global south countries more frequently and more acutely than men. So frequently in the sense that they're always there with children or family members because of the caregiving aspects that are embedded in culture. And then more acutely, what I mean by that is that a lot of men will go to a healthcare facility because they've contracted malaria or something, so they go to get a pill, or they break their finger and they get it reset or something like that. Whereas women are often there to give birth. Right. And that biologically exposes them to all these pathogens that could be in the air, on surfaces, and so on and so forth. And I don't need to explain the importance of sterility when performing surgery and so on. You just have to watch an episode of ER and see the doctors walking around like this all the time, right? And so it's really important to their health. One of the biggest problems that we have in the world today is maternal and infant mortality. And one of the leading causes of that is infection and sepsis. So this is really an attempt to try to address those as well as a number of other problems associated with poor WASH in healthcare facilities. So the innovation is really focused on sustainability. So the way that we approach that is we divide what WASH is in a healthcare facility into two categories. One is technical side, and one is what we call a quality of care side. Mm-hmm. So on the technical side, what that means is just, do you have running water? Is the water clean? Are the sinks working? Are the toilets working? Is just the general infrastructure around water and sanitation and hygiene functioning? And it can be just simple things like, are there locks on the bathroom doors? And little things like that can make a huge difference, particularly for women, when it comes to dignity, when it comes to privacy. Those are really important at those facilities. So fixing those things and especially maintaining them. And that's a real core piece as well, is that a lot of facilities would end up installing a new water system, a new pump system, a new solar system. But what you really need to do is you need to be able to do the simple little changes and maintenance that draws out the lifespan of those systems. Because we're talking about very low asset settings where it's very, very expensive to replace a water tank, for example. So if you just can go in and replace a washer or two, or fix up a pipe a little bit, then it can really expand the life of that system. Sometimes it's just as simple as opening and closing valves. Valves that are opened and closed will work much longer than those that are just left open or closed. So small things. Okay. On the behavior side, or on the quality of care side, we're really focused on behaviors. Washing your hands properly, which of course is very, very important in a healthcare facility. How to interact with patients with to maintain sterility, how to clean the facility, how to wash walls and floors and so on to reduce the number of bacteria, pathogens, and so on that are on those surfaces. So the way that we implement it is also through a bit of an innovation called a circuit rider approach. And so this is something that is not necessarily an innovation in a general sense. It's been around for quite some time and has been used around the world. What a circuit rider is essentially just a roving expert. It's somebody who knows how to fix a system or have a set of skills, but a facility might not have somebody who is fully employed doing that regularly, but it would benefit from having somebody come around regularly, check up on the behaviors, check up on the infrastructure. And while it's not been innovative it's something that's been used quite extensively in other settings, it is something that is innovative when it comes to doing it for healthcare facilities and doing it for WASH. So we did our testing and we found that there was still some things to work on. It's not an easy process, very dynamic program, but really, really positive results, really excellent community buy-in, really meaningful feedback from both patients and staff, because that's also really critical, is you have to keep staff healthy and safe as well. So those are the broad strokes of the program.
Your nominator describes you as having a core value in your research and teaching of focusing on economic and social justice, empathy, real-world applicability, and optimism. Why is it important to you to engage in research that's in the public's interest?
I would say that engaging in research for the public's benefit is, as the French would say, la raison d'être of what a professor should be. I think that it's a very privileged position to be in. It's a very, I take a lot of pride in being in research. You're given a lot of freedom and flexibility and intellectual leeway. And I think to use that for the benefit of society is exactly how it should be used. I can't really pinpoint exactly why, for me, there's this drive to do it. But I think that it's simultaneously good for us to sort of pursue a better world, but I think also that it's a bit selfish in the sense that it's rewarding and it makes you feel good. And my sense of what is an accomplishment or what is deemed success is maybe a little different than what you see on TV sometimes and those types of things. But that's what really means a lot to me is being able to talk with folks that you're working with, who are appreciative of you, helping out, being there, coming up with ideas, working in tandem with them to try to improve folks' lives, even just a little bit. And so it means a lot to me, but to say exactly why, I would say it's more of a feeling than it is something that can be easily defined. But what's the famous saying? You know it when you see it.
Your nominator described your commitment to collaborative relationships with other universities, particularly Indigenous universities. How does your work support equity, diversity, and inclusion in post-secondary education?
Well, let me start by explaining the partnerships with Indigenous universities. So Bolivia is a really fascinating, wonderful country. And if anybody gets a chance to visit, I highly encourage it because it's just remarkably culturally, environmentally diverse. It's just a wonderful place. And Bolivia actually has the highest percentage of Indigenous people anywhere in the Americas. much higher than any other country. And because of that, there has been, over the last 20 years or so, a real focus on the indigenization of governance in Bolivia. They enacted a new constitution that is very focused on indigenization, the use of indigenous knowledge. And I think it's a really, really admirable and meaningful step towards reconciliation, addressing the awful history of colonialism. So really impressive stuff. And part of that is the establishment of indigenous universities in these very, very indigenous rural areas of the country, because that's where the majority of folks that are Quechua or Aymara live. And so aquaculture as a farming livelihood, as a thing that you can do to earn money, is something that's also highly valued there as well. It's very much embedded in sort of culture and society. There's connections to it, both from sort of the Quechua culture, but also from the Catholic culture, which is sort of the dominant religion in Bolivia, with the tradition of eating fish around Semana Santa and so on. And so a lot of these indigenous universities have taken a great interest in educating their students around aquaculture as a further livelihood. Most of these universities are, obviously they offer many of the courses that we would consider part of a university up here, psychology and biology and a few things. But these are also very applied universities in the sense that you're trying to provide folks with livelihoods. And so they've taken a very keen interest in our work, and we've taken a keen interest in partnering with them on those as well.
So we focused mainly on your research, but you're also a teacher. In your teaching, what is the most important message you want your students to take away from your class?
I think in a very simple sense, what I want students to take away is that they can do something that has impact in the world, that what they are doing matters, and that they should have a little bit of fun at it at the same time too. You know, that the world is in need of their skills, and they should lean into that. With grad students and folks that I work with as well, you know, it's a real pleasure to see them tackle projects and problems that maybe initially seemed too big or too distant, but that really can actually feel like you're making a difference. And so that means a lot to me.
Perfect, thank you. And the final question is there anything you wish to say to the nominators of the CUFA BC selection committee?
Yes, I would like to say thank you.
Okay.
I would very much like to say thank you, but I think the other thing I'd like to say is that I'm very appreciative of your focus on this idea of impact, of making a difference, of focusing in on those folks that are trying to make the world just a little bit of a better place. And it's sometimes a little cheesy to say sometimes, but I think we kind of need to lean into that language a little bit more often. And so I really commend CUFA BC and yourself for doing that, and all the other people that were nominated as well. I read through some of the all the biographies, and I'm quite humbled actually to receive the award, because you know, folks are just making some really interesting and really profound contributions to not just knowledge, but to how the world can become a little bit better.
Well, thank you again for joining me today to talk about your work. I want to congratulate you again on being awarded the 2024 CUFA BC Early in Career Award as part of our annual Distinguished Academic Award series. And I really look forward to following your successes at Royal Roads University. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.